Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the UpNext podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have the big Iddo Gino as our very first guest. Iddo is a young founder and CEO of a successful startup company called Rapid API. And Iddo, I would love to start off this podcast with just a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, hey Maor, and thanks for having me. It's great to be on the podcast. Um, I don't know about the big but in terms of background, what I've been doing for the past 5 years now is building a company called Rapid API. And what Rapid API is we're an online community for developers, basically helping them discover and connect to APIs, which are basic components of code or services that they can use to develop applications more quickly. So developers come to Rapid to discover and connect to those APIs. We started 5 years ago, initially as an open source product or a free tool for people to use and be able to connect to APIs through. And over time, we saw a huge community of developers growing around it. And
Mhm.
in terms of some of the metrics today, we're serving around 2 million developers around the world and
Amazing.
helping them discover and connect to over 20,000 APIs using our platform.
I mean, it's truly amazing, 2 million people around the world, incredible numbers. Like you said, you've been building Rapid API for the past 5 years, and I would love to hear a little bit about the backstory and how, everything began, and how did you actually start creating this successful startup?
Yeah, definitely. So it's the kind of founding story behind Rapid. It actually kind of happened by mistake almost, or at least it became a company by mistake. So before working on Rapid API, I was actually part of a nonprofit organization. We were called Hacking Generation Y.
Oh,
And part of the belief that we had, it's actually very similar to what you were working on, which is thinking about how teenagers and young people can be very powerful founders and create new things and new ideas. But the way we wanted to empower it was by helping them develop skills of software engineering and programming.
hmm.
And the idea was to create this series of hackathons. And at the peak, we had around 50 hackathons around the world, all for teenagers, helping them learn how to program, learn how to create applications and games, and basically build something from scratch in a 36-hour hackathon. So that's
Right.
how we started. And in some of these events, we realized that APIs and open source is actually a great way for developers to build applications more quickly,
Right.
especially when you only have a few hours to do so. So we built this collection of APIs for people in the hackathons to use. And back then, it wasn't even called Rapid. It was just called Awesome APIs. In every event
Right.
that we had, we kept adding more APIs to it and improving it a little bit.
Mhm.
And eventually, actually, it was actually one of the judges in our hackathons. They ended up seeing that almost every project ended up using an API from Awesome APIs. And he kind of walked up to me at the end of the event and he was like, "Hey, what is this Awesome API thing that everybody used?" So I gave him a quick demo and I was like, "Oh, this looks pretty cool. Could
Right.
be a company. What do you think about making it into a company?" I said, "Well, maybe." And
Right.
he ended up just giving us our first check to actually start the company
Oh,
that is
wow.
today Rapid API.
You hear stories from all over the world how people became successful and their success stories, but when you hear it firsthand, like I just heard it from you, it's truly inspiring. I have to say, you talked a little bit about UpNext, that you touched about it, and for the people that are listening, I just want to give a little bit of context about us. We're a social media platform that connects young entrepreneurs from around the world and helping them grow or join a startup. And our goal is to simplify the whole process for teen entrepreneurs, of course, in the startup world. And speaking about forming startups and stuff like that, I would love actually to hear you talk about how you actually created your first startup team. The actual people that work with you right now.
Yeah, I actually think that meeting other people who are like-minded and think about starting companies or entrepreneurship in general is probably one of the most important factors in actually being successful in starting a company.
Hmm.
Both from the perspective of creating a team, right? Like you want to meet
Right.
good people that you can
Right.
work together with and build a team, but also just meeting people to hear how they work, to talk to them about idea, to get more information and experience from them. I remember for me the way a lot of that happened was in two phases. Actually, before I started the company, there used to be this place in Tel Aviv called Google Campus, which was
Okay.
it was pretty big. It was a whole floor, and anybody could just come and work out of there. And a lot of people especially young people who like didn't really have a company or an office, just worked out of there. So it's
Right.
kind of cool. You could just hang out there and meet a lot of people building great things and learn from them.
Mhm.
And then later, after we started Rapid, we actually went into an accelerator called 500 Startups.
Right.
And that's where I also met a lot of people who are also building some great things. And both these experiences just provided a lot of opportunities to learn from other people,
Right.
but also the opportunity to meet people that later became part of the team.
Well, I mean, talking about startup teams, I actually think that one of the most important things about a startup is the actual team, because you can bring like-minded people, from different angles that can help you build something incredible together. You know, but as a young entrepreneur, even though you have a team and you're a bunch of young guys, you need someone to mentor you. So I want to ask, was there someone mentoring you along the way? Because, as a 13, 14, 15, 16, even 18-year-old entrepreneur, you don't really know everything about, the startup world. You don't really know the ins and outs of a startup. So was there someone actually mentoring you along the way?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was actually our first investor. So
Oh,
the first person who came into the company, he actually worked a lot with me and taught me a lot of what I know about
mhm.
building a company, about what to do, what not to do, and how to think about a startup.
Right.
But also a lot of what I've done over time was just reading a lot of books about people who started successful companies, because I do think that there is a lot to learn just from what they did and kind of the journeys that they took in building their companies.
You said something very interesting, that actually your first mentor also invested in your startup, or in your idea. How did that even happen? I would love to hear about that story.
Yeah, we talked initially a lot of it. I didn't actually think about wanting Rapid to be a company at that stage.
Right.
So it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a normal kind of startup pitch or a normal fundraising pitch at that stage.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of it, especially in the early stages of the company, was about just seeing the early state of the product or the project that we worked on.
Mhm.
And also just the fact that the market that we're in, right? So APIs and developer tools has just been growing so rapidly over time, so that there was a lot, like, it was kind of clear that there was a lot of opportunity um, to to build a successful company there. But I also think, in retrospect, a lot of it was just him having a lot of belief in me personally, which I'm very thankful for.
Well, he clearly did a great investment, investing in you and in your startup. But I think that investments can be like a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you get the investment, someone believing in you, someone paying you a lot of money, and on the other hand, there's a lot of pressure now. So did you feel any pressure after he invested?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if we're being like starting a company,
Right.
running a team, there is a lot of pressure in doing that in a lot of different junctions.
Mhm.
And I think that the first time we got money invested, like that's pressure. The first time we hired somebody into the team and realized that they now depend on the company,
Right.
that introduces pressure. The first time we had a major customer use our product, so that if we do something wrong, we can hurt that customer. But honestly, I think that you end up saying that a lot of the people who build companies are people who do well under pressure. That's definitely one of the requirements
Right.
that comes with the job.
I mean, that's true in this world, in the entrepreneurial world, and in the startup world. The best leaders work the best under pressure, and that's totally true. You said something about that you hired your first employee after you got the first investment. So, as a young founder, you're just 24 years old. How are the relationships like, hiring older people to work under you?
I think I try. We try in our day-to-day relationships or day-to-day kind of ways of working together to not think about it too much or not give it too much weight.
Okay.
I think what's most important for us, I kind of try to run Rapid like in a company that's based around ideas and
Right.
decision making, where all we talk about was like everything centers around the value and the knowledge and the ideas that people bring to the table.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I think I personally learned in building Rapid was the value of having people who've actually who actually have different skills than I do and different backgrounds than I do. I think that when you build a team like that, that's very heterogeneous, you actually get a lot of different personalities that complement each other.
Right.
So I think that one of the best things I learned was to, really always look for the best people around, and give them a lot of freedom to do well and to thrive at Rapid.
And that is totally true. Your company, Rapid API, is thriving and still growing very quickly. So you said about choosing different personalities. How do you actually choose the right business partners for you? That can actually help you grow your company in the future.
Yeah, I think the reality of building a company, especially one like Rapid, but no, actually, it's kind of relevant for any company. A lot of what you do is selling and getting people bought into the vision and the product that you're building. I mean, when you're raising money, you're basically selling the vision to investors. When you're recruiting people into the team, you're selling your vision to them because you want them to work hard and make a bet on the company. And it's really the same when you think about finding partners or customers. A lot of it is around selling the vision to them. I think started the company by building a product for developers. So that's how we got a lot of developers using Rapid. And then some of them ended up working for larger companies. So we went and sold to the larger companies that they work for. So that was a lot of how we got our first customers and partners. And our community has been tremendously helpful in help within large companies. But the reality is, especially in the startup world, and it's very much true in Israel, but also very much true in Silicon Valley and kind of any other startup ecosystem, people are very happy to help. And a lot of how we got connected with early companies is just meeting people, networking with them, and getting introductions from them. So I think for anybody who's going to try enough, you can pretty much get to anybody. There's always going to be a connection or a way to get to any company or any customer that you want to sell into.
Well, I mean, that's totally true. In this day and age, with the power of the internet, you can actually reach or try to connect with anyone you want to work with, which is amazing. But for the young entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, and inspiring entrepreneurs, I think it would be very valuable for them to hear from you. How do you actually go from an amazing idea that you have, to an actual company? I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think for me, it really comes down to three things. One is finding a market, an industry, a problem that you personally get excited about. So I know for me, for instance, I love writing software. I like creating applications, writing games, like anything to do with programming. So creating a tool for software development was very natural for me. It's an industry I get excited about. That's not necessarily going to be true for anybody. Some people are excited about sports. Some people are excited about, healthcare. But I think the amount of work that it takes to start a company, you have to be excited about what you do. So that's number one, just finding something that you're excited about. And it doesn't have to be a specific idea, because the actual product's going to change. Every company makes a lot of fine tuning as it launches the product. It's about the industry or the space that you operate within. The second one is finding a team of talented people to work with, right? So it's like starting a company. It's not an individual game. It's a group sport. It's a team sport. And you have to put together a team that you are very comfortable and happy to work with, where everybody brings something slightly different to the table. And that's another, kind of thing that I learned, because I think a lot of the people that I gravitated towards earlier were people that were very much like me. And it makes sense, because we jive very well together, but it doesn't actually add much value. You want people who are different and have different skills and ways of thinking than you do. So that's number two, building a team of a lot of people with different skill sets. And I think number three, and not less important, is finding that initial set of customers, potential customers, users that you can work with, because they're going to give the best feedback and actually help you build the product within the industry that you're looking for. Otherwise, you're just building something that you don't know if anybody's ever going to use, or if it actually solves a real problem. So yeah, industry that you're excited about, team that complements you well, and customers who can give you feedback. I think those are the first three things that any company needs.
I mean, wow, truly amazing tips. And, any entrepreneur or inspiring entrepreneur that is listening to this podcast right now can, apply those tips and see incredible growth. And just to wrap up this podcast, I would love for you to give some more tips for young entrepreneurs and inspiring entrepreneurs that can actually help them, just start their journey.
To kind of touch on your summary,
Right.
I guess when you look at retrospect at the journey and what it took to build a company, it all looks, kind of very nice and perfect and everything makes sense. And, it almost sounds easy when you describe it like that. The reality is it wasn't, and it wasn't anything like perfect. And at any stage of the way, I personally, and we as a company, made a tremendous amount of mistakes or did things wrong or had challenges. And I think that the most important thing, and if you ask for about tips, like if people start a company, is not to be deterred by doing things wrong or by making mistakes. It's natural and it's how you learn. And I know for myself personally, when I look back at things that I did, 3 years ago, even 2 years ago in a lot of cases, or last year, I almost cringe and I feel like, oh, that was so, like, how stupid was it of me to do that? But in a way, that's a good sign. It means that I learned. I now do things differently, and I learned how to be better at my job. And, and I think that's what it's all about. So it's about not being afraid of making mistakes and just trying to learn from them and becoming a better entrepreneur tomorrow than you were yesterday.
So, Iddo, thank you so much for an amazing podcast. It was filled with a lot of value from your amazing answers, and I'm hoping to do another podcast with you soon.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, for anybody listening to this and thinking of starting a company, good luck. It's a challenging journey, but it's a fun one.
Yep, exactly.